For decades, Kuwait was one country that Iran would never touch. Every other Gulf state took the missiles either from Iran or from their proxies. Saudi Arabia absorbed the Houthi attacks that Iranians armed and directed. The UAE took 3,000 drones and missile strikes during this war alone. And Qatar, the supposed Iranian ally, was hit anyway. But you see, Kuwait was different. Kuwait stayed neutral, and Kuwait all this time, even before this war, kept the diplomatic channels open, both with Iran and with other Gulf monarchies. But it seems now Iran is breaking its own rules. Last night, IRGC commandos infiltrated a Kuwaiti military island to kill or capture American soldiers. I'm not joking, this was a massive escalation on the Iranians' part, and they're doing this during negotiations where they are supposedly saying that they want long-term peace. This is something that has been confirmed by the Kuwaiti Foreign Ministry. Take a look at the report. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs expresses the state of Kuwait's strong condemnation and denunciation of an armed group from elements of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in the Islamic Republic of Iran, infiltrating Bubiyan Island with the aim of carrying out hostile acts against the state of Kuwait and their engagement with Kuwaiti armed forces personnel before being apprehended, which resulted in the injury of one member of the Kuwaiti armed forces. You see, the reason this is such a big deal is because the island that Iran decided to attack. This island, Bubiyan Island, sits about 30 kilometers southwest of the Iranian border. And Iran knows that US forces are now using this island and the base that's on there. That's because, you see, Iran actually attacked this island once before. On April 4th, when the US forces conducted numerous airstrikes just north of this location against Iranian terrorists attempting to cross into Iraq, Iran responded by hitting this island. Basically a retaliation for US strikes because Iran knows there are US forces operating out of this island. Then today, in the middle of a ceasefire and in middle of negotiations, IRGC attempted to infiltrate the base where quite possibly US forces are located. It's not hard to assume what their goal was, either to kill or capture some American soldiers so they can get more leverage in the negotiations. Now, the important thing here is that Kuwait did say that this was an attack on their sovereignty and they reserve the right to respond. Here's that statement. Kuwait has said the state of Kuwait reserves its full and inherent right to self-defense in accordance to Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, and to take such measures as is deemed appropriate to defend its sovereignty and protect its people and residents. Now, the reason I bring up this statement, even though it sounds like it's just a cookie cutter statement that any country would put out after they are attacked, is because UAE would put out similar statements every time Iran would attack them with drones and missiles. And guess what? Before, we have covered, personally speaking, that UAE was heading back. And today, we actually have official confirmation of that happening. Take a look at this report. The UAE has been secretly carrying out attacks on Iran. One strike in April hit an oil refinery on Iran's Lavan Island. Now, the timing of this attack is definitely interesting because it likely happened maybe few hours before or few hours after the ceasefire was announced. We don't know the exact time, but we know that was the day the attack took place. Now, at that point, in April, when the ceasefire was announced, everyone was speculating that who could it be? Was it Israel who hit this refinery? Was it the United States? Now, both of those countries, US and Israel, publicly denied that they weren't involved in this attack, and Iran never blamed anyone. But there were rumors that it was the UAE, and now we have confirmation. Now, this is where I do want to clarify for anyone that's confused. Initially, when this war started, every single Gulf country basically said that they're not going to let the United States use the airspace, and they're not going to let the United States use the bases that are situated in their territory. But this changed when Iran started attacking these countries in retaliation for the United States and Israel attacking Iran. That makes no sense to anyone. What Iran was doing was just pure terrorism. They were attacking a country that did not want to be involved in this war, and that's exactly why we now have more reports of other countries basically either giving permission to the United States to carry out attacks on Iran using their airspace, or countries like the UAE getting involved directly and hitting Iran and Iranian refineries. Now, UAE may be a small country, but their military is nothing to laugh about. Their military is well equipped with Western-made fighter jets and surveillance networks. The attack suggests the country is now more willing to use force against Iran to make sure they don't get bullied by a terrorist regime. And if the war restarts, this is definitely not a good news for the Iranian regime. And guess what? It's not just Iran that was hitting UAE. We also have reports coming from Saudi Arabia that they were doing the same thing. Take a look at this. This literally came out while I was recording this video. So while I was recording the intro, the report came out that Saudi was also part of the retaliation against Iran. Here's the report from Reuters. Saudi Arabia launched covert attacks on Iran as regional war widened. And again, the timing of this is important. Saudi was not part of this war when the war started. Saudi only got involved in self-defense and in retaliation, basically to create deterrence. It was Iran who first attacked Saudi infrastructure and Saudi citizens. No self-respecting country would just let it slide. So even though during the war we didn't know if Saudi Arabia was heading back or not, now we have confirmation that they were heading back. They were just not publicly announcing all this. Now this confirmation does come from two Western officials, which we don't know what that means. It could mean anyone, someone who's part of the government here in the United States or someone else from Europe or somewhere else. Then another two officials who are confirming this news are Iranian officials. Not sure how trustworthy that part is. But nonetheless, it's not far-fetched to believe that a country that's getting attacked by Iran unprovoked would respond somehow. That's how you create deterrence. That's how you make sure that people just don't go around attacking you. Now, another thing that's important to clarify here is that these reports are coming out now, but they're talking about attacks that took place before the ceasefire went into effect. So before April, these attacks took place during the war when Iran was hitting these countries and these countries were retaliating. If the war were to restart, which looks more and more likely because of the negotiations, the United States is not willing to give any concessions when it comes to nuclear conditions they have, meaning they're willing to let go the missile condition that we had before the war. We are willing to let go the proxy funding that we were asking Iran before the war, but there has been no concessions offered when it comes to Iran's nuclear weapons and enrichment programs. And Iran is not willing to give those up either. So it seems like war has to restart at some point if negotiations don't move forward. And guess what? These Middle Eastern countries, these Gulf countries who were part of this war before, they are preparing for a second round. I have more details. Before we get into that, just a quick reminder for everyone to hit the like and subscribe button down below. It truly does help us out tremendously. And now let's look at this clip.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. The Middle East is bracing for the possibility that the region returns to war in the days ahead. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Khalibaf, posted to X overnight saying our armed forces are ready to deliver a well-deserved response to any aggression. Mistaken strategy and mistaken decisions will always lead to mistaken results. The whole world has already figured this out. We are prepared for all options. They will be surprised. The threatening language comes after President Trump rejected the Iranian response to the U.S. peace proposal, calling it a piece of garbage, as he indicated the ceasefire is on life support.
It's unbelievably weak, I would say. I would call it the weakest right now. After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. I said, I'm not going to waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support.
Do you believe a diplomatic solution is possible with Iran, or do you only have military options now?
No, I think it's very possible.
Now, yesterday, President Trump did meet with military advisors and national security advisors to basically look at the options the United States has. This meeting took place after Iran sent their peace proposal, which was basically something the United States cannot accept. Iran wants to pause the war. Iran wants the United States to lift the U.S. blockade. Iran wants the U.S. to release all the frozen funds. And in return, Iran just wants to open up the Strait of Hormuz. They do not want to give up the nuclear enrichment program they have. They do not want to give up the nuclear or enriched uranium that they have inside their nuclear facilities. All they want to do right now is just open up the Strait of Hormuz. And they want the United States to give up all the leverage that the US has. Of course, this is something US should not accept, and I don't think this is something US will accept. That's why the meeting took place with military commanders yesterday. But this is where it's important to clarify. Just because there was a meeting doesn't necessarily mean that a military action is coming anytime soon. These meetings are happening basically 2 times every single week ever since the ceasefire started. And we really haven't had any military action outside of Project Freedom. So maybe this could mean that Project Freedom would be restarting anytime soon, but just because there was a meeting with military commanders doesn't necessarily mean that the war is restarting. Important thing to keep an eye on here is President Trump is leaving for China tomorrow, and China has a lot of leverage over Iran, and Iran thinks China has a lot of leverage over the United States. So let's see how the meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping goes, what comes out of that meeting. I would highly doubt that a war would restart before that meeting. From the US point of view, it's a very important meeting. From Chinese point of view, it's a very important meeting. Both sides would really prefer not to talk about Iran, but that's probably impossible considering the world we are living in right now. Pretty much every country in the world is suffering because of the Strait of Hormuz crisis that Iran created. So I'm sure Iran would be the most important topic that the leaders would talk about. Let's see what comes out of it. Now, another important story that came out yesterday has to do with Pakistan, the country that has been mediating negotiations between the United States and Iran. And it's interesting because it seems like Pakistan may not be the neutral negotiator that the United States wants it to be. Take a look at this report. As Pakistan positioned itself as a diplomatic conduit between Tehran and Washington, it quietly allowed Iranian military aircraft to park it in its country, potentially shielding them from US strikes. Days after Trump announced the ceasefire in early April, Tehran sent multiple aircrafts to Pakistan Air Force Base Nur Khan. Among the military hardware was an Iranian Air Force RC-130, a reconnaissance and intelligence gathering variant of Lockheed C-130 Hercules tactical transport aircraft. Pakistani officials now confirmed that Iranian planes arrived in the country, as CBS reported, and are still there. The Pakistan military says, or the Pakistan Foreign Ministry says, that there is no linkage whatsoever to any military contingency or preservation arrangement. Assertions suggesting otherwise speculative, misleading, and entirely detached from the factual context. Pakistan says that the aircrafts are in the country to basically facilitate security in case there is further peace talks scheduled. Now, this is not that far-fetched of a conclusion because US military itself sent a lot of equipment to Pakistan in case there was a second round of talks happening and in case President Trump visits the country. But the reason so many people are so skeptical of Pakistan is because, as you guys may already know, during the Afghanistan war, Pakistan was in a way playing both sides. They were helping Afghanistan, they were helping Taliban, all the while being a US ally during that war. And that's why a lot of people have a harder time trusting Pakistan completely. One such person is Senator Lindsey Graham, who said this about Pakistan just this morning. Take a listen.
Are you aware of reports that Pakistan are allowing their bases to be used to park Iranian aircraft? General Kane?
Sir, I've seen one report on that.
Well, is it accurate?
Sir, I think based on the variety of classification matters.
Let me just say, do you agree if it is accurate, that is sort of inconsistent with it being a peace mediator?
Sir, I wouldn't want to comment on that based on the ongoing negotiations and Pakistan's role.
Secretary Hexton, if the mediator is allowing reconnaissance aircraft in Iran to be parked in Pakistani air bases, do you think that's consistent with being a fair mediator?
I wouldn't want to get in the middle of these negotiations. I want
well, I
maximum
do.
efficacy
I
for
want
our
to get in
people.
the middle of these negotiations. I don't trust Pakistan as far as I can throw them. If they actually do have Iranian aircraft parked in Pakistan bases to protect Iranian military assets, that tells me we should be looking maybe for somebody else to mediate. No wonder this damn thing is going nowhere.
Now, let's see what comes out of this. Let's see if those planes actually go back to Iran or not, if peace talks are called off, because then we would know exactly what those planes are doing in Pakistan. Now, this is where one thing I do want to point out is just 2-3 weeks ago, we had Iranian officials accusing Pakistan of being too pro-United States in these negotiations. They wanted a mediator who was neutral. So in a way, that's kind of a positive, but if both sides are accusing the mediator of being pro the other side, because at least it's not just accusations coming from one side. Both sides are thinking that Pakistan is not doing enough to help out their side, or maybe Pakistan is doing too much to help out the other side. But nonetheless, I think as negotiations move forward, we'll know more. Now, shifting our focus back into Iran, the economic situation is getting really, really bad. Take a look at this report. One thing almost every person I talk to in Iran has told me, and you wouldn't notice from English language media coverage, is that the back-breaking inflation that Iran is going through right now, particularly for food. The prices have gone up exponentially in the past month, and this is because the supply is really not coming in. There was a food cargo that was supposed to go in, but apparently Iranians were trying to, or more specifically IRGC was trying to smuggle in weapons by hiding them in these containers that are really meant to be transporting food for the country. And that's why the inflation is really out of control, because supply is not coming in. And of course, Iranian currency just keeps crashing. And that means Iranians just buy less of what they can import. Whatever they're buying from overseas, their currency loses value every single day. And that means they can buy less and less every single day. In fact, the situation has gotten so bad that Iran's central bank has imposed restrictions on foreign currency transactions to preserve its reserves. Basically, they want to make sure they have hard currency, foreign currencies like dollar, euro, maybe even yuan, that they can use to buy supplies from other countries. Now, this is where the economic situation is only going to get worse, but unfortunately, this is the problem with dictatorships or something like, I guess, Russia or North Korea, where even though the economic situation is horrible, the people are suffering every single day. The elites who are making decisions don't suffer, so they can last for a very long time. This is one of the bigger problems with sanctions, especially in the short term. Because sanctions work. They're meant to go after the economy. They're meant to make it harder for the people at the top to basically grow their economy and make money. But unfortunately, even when the economy suffers, the people don't want to give up power, so they're not willing to admit mistake and negotiate. We have seen this happen in Russia. We have seen this happen in North Korea. And we'll probably see this happen in Iran. The population will suffer the most. The elites will enjoy the power they have and benefit off of that, and they want to continue that way for as long as they can. Now, to understand why Iran is behaving the way it's behaving right now, we have to go back and look at how Iran got to where it is today. That doesn't just mean going back to 1979 when the Islamic Revolution took place. In fact, we have to go further back to when the Qajar dynasty was ruling Iran in the 19th century and look at how the decisions the ruling class made back then still affects Iran to this very day. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we're doing in our multi-part podcast that just came out today. So if you're someone who's interested in the history of Iran and how we got to where we are today, definitely go check it out. You can watch it by clicking the links in the description, or you can just watch it by clicking the end screen on your screen, basically clicking the video that's on your screen.